Hi, I'm Naila. My parents told me not to come to my own sister's wedding because her in-laws didn't want me there. But that wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was realizing I had paid for most of it. The flowers, the venue, even the dress she wore to insult me. They smiled in my face while erasing me behind closed doors. So I did what they never expected. I stopped funding the fantasy. But how do you walk away from a family you built your whole life around and still live with yourself? The message came through just as I was pouring coffee into a chipped ceramic mug. I didn't check it right away. Thought maybe it was another appointment reminder or an automated confirmation from the grocery app. But when I finally picked up the phone, the words on the screen hit me like a slap across the face. Don't come to Luna's wedding. Travis's family doesn't want you there. No, hey, no sorry. Just that. Short, clinical, and very much on brand for my mother. I stared at it, rereading, thinking maybe I'd missed context. Maybe there was more. But that was it. Just one line that turned my stomach. The room was still. My coffee cooled untouched beside me. The early spring breeze drifting in through the kitchen window couldn't even cut through the silence that wrapped around me like a vice. I didn't reply. Not at first. What was I supposed to say? Thanks for the heads up? Guess I'll cancel my hotel now? A million responses came to mind, some sharp, some passive, some begging for clarification, but none of them made it past my lips. Instead, I sat back in the chair, staring at the screen until it dimmed. Then I tapped the message again. Read it once more. Travis's family doesn't want you there. I wasn't sure what offended me more, that I was unwanted by people I barely knew, or that my own mother had delivered the message like it was a change in weather. Casual, predictable, unavoidable. The next morning, Sandra texted me again, this time with something even more laughable. Lunch Thursday? Just us. I should have said no. Should have told her I was busy or that I didn't do lunches with people who disowned me via iMessage. But something in me, maybe foolishness, maybe the urge to look her in the eye, made me text back. Sure. We met at a little cafe on 12th South, the kind of place with reclaimed wood tables and overpriced kale bowls. She'd already ordered a sparkling water when I arrived. No hug, no smile. She just waved at the chair across from her. Glad you could make it, she said, like I was being difficult. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak just yet. I scanned the menu, ordered something I knew I wouldn't eat, and folded my hands in my lap like I was waiting for a verdict. So, she started, sipping her drink, I know the text caught you off guard. Caught me off guard? It was short, I said carefully. She shrugged. I didn't think a long explanation would help. I could feel the heat rising behind my eyes, but I kept my voice steady. Help who? You? Luna, Travis's parents? Her eyes narrowed slightly. You always make things about you, Naila. That's exhausting. There it was, the first knife. I'd known it was coming. I leaned back. I was the one uninvited. I think I'm allowed a reaction. Sandra didn't flinch. She just pushed her napkin around her plate. Travis's family is very traditional. They have expectations. Luna didn't want drama. Right, I said. Because excluding your sister is the definition of peace. She gave me that look, the one she'd used since we were kids, the one that said I was overreacting again. You and Luna are very different people. She fits in better. I don't remember paying the bill. I know I did because I found the receipt later in my bag, crumpled like a forgotten insult. But the entire second half of that lunch was a blur. Her voice, her words, her calm composure while she essentially explained how I'd never been the daughter she could display to the world without explanation. On the way home, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even tell a friend. I walked the 3 blocks to my condo in silence, took the stairs instead of the elevator, and opened the door to a place that at least had the decency to reflect who I was. Minimal, quiet, mine. I sat down on the edge of the bed, kicked off my shoes, and stared at the ceiling for a long time. The light was soft, the shadows familiar, and still, the silence was heavy. That was when it clicked. They'd already chosen. Not just today, not just with this wedding, but years ago. In every holiday photo where I was cropped out, in every oops birthday they forgot. In every call that started with, "Can you help?" and ended with, "Well, you're good at that stuff." I'd been a wallet, a sidekick, a useful footnote, and now that I'd become inconvenient, uncomfortable, they wanted me erased. So be it. I opened my laptop, created a new spreadsheet. I titled it Family Ledger. Line by line, I began documenting every dollar, every favor, every deposit I'd made over the last 5 years. $3,800. Rent help for Luna and Travis during the layoff, $5,000. Dad's retirement penalty reversal, $612. Engagement shoot. Deposit $2,500. Venue deposit. Non-refundable paid from my account. $180. Save the date website. Annual domain plus design $900. Airbnb for bridal party. By the time I was done, the sun had dipped below the skyline. My coffee was still on the counter. Cold, forgotten. I didn't feel petty. I felt prepared. I closed the file and stared at the screensaver glowing faintly across the room. And then I whispered to the stillness. They wanted peace. They can keep it. Without me. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset, not anymore. It was something else, something colder, like a wire had been cut inside me, and I could finally stop pretending it wasn't buzzing all these years. I turned off the lights, shut my laptop, and sat in the dark until morning. Not morning, planning. Around 8 a.m., my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I ignored it at first, but then it chimed again. I know things are tense, but could you send me $300 for the flowers? I'm having trouble with my card. Mom. There it was. No. How are you feeling? No. I know things were hard yesterday. Just a straight-up request like nothing happened. Like I hadn't just been told, without hesitation, that I wasn't welcome at my sister's wedding. I stared at the message long enough for the screen to dim. Then I turned the brightness back up, just to screenshot it. I didn't answer. I didn't owe her a response. What I owed myself, finally, was honesty. They didn't care. Not really. Not about what they took, or how often they took it, or how it made me feel like an afterthought who should just smile and write the check. I set the phone down and made myself a cup of coffee. This time, I drank it hot. Mid-morning, I opened the family group chat out of habit. I had no idea why. Maybe part of me was still trying to track the disaster unfolding from afar. But when I tapped the icon, the screen flashed with a small, impersonal message. You are no longer a participant in this conversation. Just like that. Not blocked, not muted, just gone. I tapped again, then went into Luna's profile. Her latest post was already getting dozens of likes. Final fitting done. Can't wait to be surrounded by love. Smiley faces. Hearts. Sandra commented, So proud of you, baby girl. Glenn dropped a thumbs up. Travis's sister posted a string of pink dress emojis. One of Luna's bridesmaids replied, OMG, it's going to be perfect. And there I was, erased, not even worth the courtesy of a heads up, just deleted. You don't accidentally remove someone from a group chat, not when they've been the one organizing vendor files and sharing spreadsheets, not when they've been the one replying to catering emails. You only remove someone like that when you've decided their usefulness has expired. I sat still, staring at the screen, the silence around me almost respectful in its clarity. This wasn't about forgetting. This was intentional. Later that afternoon, I went to the hall closet, pulled down an old cardboard box labeled Luna Grad Party in Sharpie. Inside were receipts, unused invitations, and a photo album I'd made for her as a gift. She never posted about it, never thanked me beyond a quick, looks great. I'd organized the whole event, called vendors, picked a playlist, even cleaned up after half the guests bailed. But the only photos she shared online were of her and her friends. I wasn't in a single one. You only see the sparkle when you don't have to sweep the floor. I sat on the couch with that album on my lap, flipping through pictures of balloons, handwritten cards, and Polaroids that no longer meant anything. Then I stood up, walked it all to the trash chute, and let it go with one smooth drop. That night, I made a new folder on my laptop. I didn't title it Revenge or Receipts at first, just something simple. Evidence. But it didn't stay simple for long. In that folder, I began collecting every piece of documentation, every dollar I'd loaned or given, every email where I was tasked to just take care of it, every message where they guilted me into helping. I found 87 screenshots in my phone alone, 6 spreadsheets, 12 PDFs. I added the PayPal statements and invoices. I saved the WhatsApp voice notes where Luna joked about how I'd pay for anything if they made it sound urgent. I renamed the folder. Enough. It wasn't rage. It wasn't grief. It was something more dangerous. Precision. The part of me that had always stayed quiet was now wide awake and sorting files by date. The next morning, I didn't answer the texts, didn't like Luna's post, didn't send the flower money. I started backing everything up to 2 cloud accounts and a secure drive. If they wanted peace, they could have kept it by not turning me into their backup plan. And if they thought I'd just walk away without a sound, they forgot one thing. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It means I'm building something stronger. The next morning came without sunlight. The sky hung low and gray, like even the weather wanted to stay quiet around me. I'd barely slept, again, but my mind was sharp, almost unnervingly so. There was no fog, no hesitation, just focus. I poured myself a cup of black coffee and sat at the small desk in my bedroom, opening a blank spreadsheet like I was stepping into a courtroom with myself as the only witness, prosecutor, and judge. The title at the top of the document read, Unpaid Debts, Emotional and Financial. I started slow. Wedding website, $245 Airbnb for out-of-town guests, $783. Luna's emergency rent, October, $3,800. Deposit for rehearsal dinner, $1,250. Canva Pro subscription they used, $119. Bridal shower decorations, they never reimbursed, $392. Spa booking for Luna and bridesmaids, $680. It went on. Page after page. No tears, no frustration, just data. Clean, brutal facts. Every time I'd helped without being asked. Every time I'd been asked and didn't hesitate. And every time I'd been dismissed afterward like I'd simply filled my role. By the time I reached line 43, I felt calmer than I had in weeks. I wasn't spiraling. I was documenting. And that meant something. That afternoon my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, but I picked up anyway. Naila, Mom's voice. Calm, too calm. We're having dinner tonight, just family. To talk, no judgment. I hesitated. She added, Luna will be there, and your father. It would mean a lot. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I said, where and when? 6:30, at the house. I showed up in a navy dress shirt and dark jeans. Simple, intentional. I didn't bring anything, not even a notebook, just my presence. If they were going to ambush me, I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of thinking I came ready for war. The table was already set when I arrived. Luna and Travis were seated, side by side like magazine models. Clarice and Jerome stood in the corner, whispering. My parents sat at each end like this was some kind of mediation. No one smiled. Thanks for coming, Sandra said as she gestured to the chair left open, the one furthest from Luna. I sat down, folded my hands, waited. It didn't take long. Luna was the first to speak. I just want to say this has all gotten really out of hand. The wedding is supposed to be a happy time, and you've made it uncomfortable. I didn't flinch. I made it uncomfortable? I asked quietly. She looked at me like I'd missed the point. You've been passive-aggressive, not replying to messages, not helping anymore? I didn't respond. Travis jumped in. My family isn't used to conflict. You being involved, your attitude, it's not easy for them. I looked at him evenly. You mean honesty? Clarice stepped forward. We just want everything to be smooth. You're making it harder than it needs to be. No one spoke up for me. Not Dad, not Sandra, not even Jerome, who once told me I was the only person in the family who remembered his birthday. But when Luna started tearing up, the room shifted. Suddenly, Mom was reaching for tissues. Dad put his hand on Luna's shoulder. Travis leaned in and whispered something only she could hear. Clarice glared at me like I'd broken something precious. No one asked why Luna was crying. No one asked what I had gone through. I sat there looking at the plate in front of me, untouched. A salad I didn't order, with a vinaigrette I didn't like. I counted the olives. 6. When the performance ended, I stood up, quietly, no grand speech. As I turned to leave, Dad followed me to the hallway. He didn't say much, never did. But just before I reached the door, he leaned in and said, "You always were too sensitive." I paused. Then I turned to him and said evenly, "And you always were too silent." He didn't reply. I drove home in silence. The streets of Brentwood were empty, washed in the soft yellow of street lamps. No music, no podcasts, just the quiet truth that I'd known all along, but hadn't been brave enough to say out loud. At home, I opened my laptop, clicked open the Enough folder. I created a new draft email and titled it, "Venue Contract, my name on it." I attached the PDF. I saved the email. I didn't send it, not yet, but I would. The next 2 days passed without noise. I didn't hear from my parents. No calls, no attempts to smooth things over. It was as if my silence had made me invisible. Again. On the third morning, I found a small yellow envelope in my mailbox. No return address, no markings, just my name, typed and taped across the front. I knew it wasn't junk. The weight of it felt intentional. Inside were printed screenshots, dozens of them. Not emails, not receipts. These were from a private group chat, one I wasn't supposed to see. Luna. "We'll get him to pay for the cake too. Just guilt him about being the only sibling. Works every time." Clarice. "He's not even invited. Problem solved." Jerome. "Wait, he's still doing the website? That's wild." Luna again. "He's too nice. It's pathetic." And just above all that venom, there was a sticky note in unfamiliar handwriting. "You deserve to see this. T." I didn't need to guess who T was. Only one person had ever called me after I left a family gathering early and said, "You don't deserve what they do to you." Therese, my cousin on Dad's side, always quiet, always watching. I hadn't spoken to her in months, but now she was speaking in the clearest way possible. I stared at the printouts, hands steady, breathing measured. My name wasn't in the chat, not once. I wasn't tagged, I wasn't asked about. I was just the bank account with a pulse, the person they kept on standby until they no longer needed me. I scanned the last screenshot. It was Clarice again. "He's dramatic. I mean, come on. It's not like he's family. And that one stung more than I expected. I walked over to my desk, slid the envelope next to my laptop, and opened a new folder titled Contingency. Then I sent Travis a message. "I received something. I think you should see it." He replied within minutes. "You always twist things. You made my mom uncomfortable from the start." No pause, no curiosity, no, "What is it?" Just blame. Wearing black to brunch? Questioning the flower cost? You never know when to let things go. You always turn stuff into drama, again. I stared at the screen, blinking slowly. I hadn't expected an apology, but I thought, naively, that the proof might spark doubt. Instead, he defaulted to the family line. "You're the problem. You always were." I didn't reply. I grabbed my keys and drove to the grocery store. Not because I needed food. I just needed air, motion, distance from the walls that had been listening to me scream inside for years. I parked under a flickering streetlight and sat there, the engine still humming. In the quiet, I remembered a night 4 years ago when Luna called me crying about her rent being overdue. Travis had just lost his job, and they were 3 months behind. Their landlord had threatened eviction. I wired $3,800 within 10 minutes. No questions asked. Back then, I called it love. Now I realized it was utility. I wasn't family. I was a solution. That was the pattern. I picked up the tab. I absorbed the criticism. I stayed silent. I made things easier for everyone but me. That was done now. Back at home, I printed the screenshots. 3 sets, just in case. 1 in a fireproof folder, 1 in my digital vault, and 1 I kept in a manila envelope under the mattress. Then I opened my email. Rowena. She used to work with me in project compliance. Sharp, skeptical, and just paranoid enough to be effective. She ran a small agency now, digital forensics. Her business motto, truth leaves metadata. I typed 1 line. Still interested in verifying digital evidence? I hit send. No attachments, just the question. It didn't take long for her to reply. Always. What are we burning down? Rowena's message stayed open on my screen for almost an hour. I didn't respond right away. Not because I was unsure, but because I was organizing the next move like I was preparing for trial. That night, I sat with my laptop, scrolling through my old PayPal activity. It started as a simple task, categorizing transactions tied to the wedding. But then I saw it, $10,000, for Luna's tuition urgent, sent to my mom's account almost 3 years ago. Back then, she'd called in tears, said they were behind on payments and Luna might have to drop out of school. I wired it without hesitation. No questions, no contracts. Family was family, right? Except something didn't line up. I pulled up the date, August 4th. Then I cross-checked it against public business records. Rowena had taught me how years ago. In a few clicks, I found it. Nimbus Edge LLC. Registered August 9th, members listed. Clarice V., Luna S., Jerome D. Filed through a virtual agent in Franklin, Tennessee. No mention of me. No hint that the seed money for their startup had come from my savings account. The money wasn't for tuition, it was a cover. They lied, and built a company on that lie. I leaned back in my chair and whispered out loud, "They're not just using me, they're laundering my loyalty." Around 10 a.m. the next morning my phone rang, unknown number, but I had a hunch. "Hello?" A pause. Then her voice, smooth, southern, practiced. "Naila, this is Darlene, Travis's mother." I stayed quiet. I just wanted to call because I know tensions have been high, and I think we all want what's best for Luna. Still, I said nothing. She continued. "Look, I know you feel left out, and that's unfortunate. But Luna's in a fragile place right now. Any stress could ruin her big day. So maybe if you could just hold off on anything disruptive?" There it was. I gave a dry, almost amused chuckle. Disruptive? Like being erased from the family? Or just being asked for money after being told not to show up? She hesitated. "We're not trying to exclude you. We're just curating a safe experience for family." That word, curating, as if I were a toxin to be filtered. "Then maybe you should have excluded my money too." A long breath on the other end of the line, then low and cold. "Just don't do anything you'll regret." She hung up before I could reply. I stood in the kitchen, still holding the phone. The audacity of her call didn't even shock me. Not anymore. It confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a strategy. I grabbed a pen and a post-it. Wrote one sentence. "No one who benefits from me gets to erase me." I folded it and stuck it above my laptop, just under the Enough folder tab. Then I opened a new email to Rowena. Subject, verified ownership, body. Need your forensic eye on Nimbus Edge. I want to know who's legally liable. While waiting for her response, I went through the company's online presence, their brand voice, their press kit, their investor bios. Clarice listed herself as co-founder. Luna was labeled as strategic growth. Jerome was head of outreach. They'd taken my financial lifeline and built a digital fortress, pretending they'd done it all themselves. I gathered everything. Screenshots, registration docs, tax ID numbers. I printed them. Then I added a clean copy of my PayPal transfer receipt, highlighting the transaction ID and date. I slipped it all into a manila envelope and sealed it with clear tape. On the back, I wrote in Sharpie, Clarice V., open carefully. I walked the 3 blocks to the nearest mailbox, the autumn air dry and sharp against my skin. I slid the envelope through the slot and listened for the soft thunk of it dropping inside. They had one chance to acknowledge the truth quietly. They chose not to. Back in my apartment, I shut the door behind me and let the lock catch. For a second, I didn't move. I just stood there, leaning against the wood like it might hold me up better than my spine could. Outside, the wind kept screaming like it had something urgent to confess, some storm-born truth that could never quite break through glass and concrete. But inside, the silence cut clean. It wasn't peace exactly, more like precision. And that was enough. That was what I needed. I didn't bother taking off my coat. I didn't turn on the lights or put on music or start boiling water like I normally would when trying to soothe a nervous system wired too tight. I didn't want comfort. I wanted clarity. I wanted control. I walked straight to my desk, powered up the laptop, and opened the wedding dashboard. The loading bar crawled across the screen, then it hit full. The list stared back at me. First up, the florist. They'd sent mood boards and proposal PDFs and 6 different options for peony substitutes, because Clarice said actual peonies were fiscally irresponsible. I'd spent 3 weekends getting the color palette just right: mauve, dusty rose, sage, all for a wedding I no longer recognized, much less belonged to. I hovered over the vendor contract and clicked cancel service. One confirmation later, the arches, the centerpieces, the fake Pinterest magic, they were gone. Next, the photographer. He'd been Luna's find. One of those guys who only shot in natural light and talked a lot about capturing moments of raw emotion. Cancelled. Then, the venue. That goddamn barn. The one Clarice called rustic chic, and Luna said would pop on reels. I'd booked it, under my name, paid the deposit from my account. Added the insurance myself because they didn't have time to worry about the boring stuff. I scrolled to the cancellation option and clicked. A message popped up. Are you sure you want to proceed? I smiled. Just slightly. The kind of smile people give in courtrooms and final acts. Never been more. I chose the insurance refund option. They'd get 90% of their dream wedding back? Technically. But dreams aren't quite as dreamy when someone else has the receipt. When the foundation of your fairy tale is an unpaid invoice in someone else's inbox. I wasn't done. I logged into Canva Next, deleted the wedding signage. Gone were the pastel welcome signs with elegant serif fonts. Gone was the seating chart I spent an entire weekend building after Clarice insisted she wanted a clean UX flow. Gone was the custom-built RSVP site that integrated with her livestream audience's wedding predictions. I deleted it all. Then I renamed the shared wedding planning folder. Ask Clarice for help. I logged out. That could have been enough. That's where a normal person might have stopped, chalked it up to a moral victory and gone to bed. But I'm not a normal person. I opened a second browser window, logged into Nimbus Edge's internal payroll system. Clarice must have forgotten to revoke my admin credentials. She always liked being the face, the brand, the voice. But behind all that, it had been me who wired the structure. Me who set up the permissions and filters and protocols. One oversight on her part. One open door. Her mistake. I scrolled to the pending payroll queue. Friday's batch. Luna, Travis, Clarice, Jerome. I clicked Pause Disbursement. A prompt appeared. Are you performing a temporary freeze for internal audit? Yes. In the memo line I typed, Funds pending review, initiated by NS. I pressed Enter. The second my finger left the key, my phone lit up like a detonated beehive. 5 missed calls from Sandra. Luna's message. What are you doing? This is a disaster. Clarice. This is theft. You'll regret this. Jerome. Are you serious right now? This is illegal. I turned the phone face down. Then I made tea. Chamomile. 4 minutes steeped, stirred in honey. Let the cup rest in my palms. Sat at the kitchen table and listened to the hush between moments. I wasn't panicked, not anxious, no tightness in my chest, no shame in the back of my throat, no whisper of guilt crawling up my spine telling me I'd gone too far. Because for the first time I knew I hadn't. I hadn't overreacted. I had finally acted. Period. As the kettle cooled, I opened the laptop again, but not for deletion this time, for documentation. I typed an email to Rowena. Subject, if they retaliate. Body, we go public. Let me know when files are verified. Send, then another draft. This one to Clarice. No fanfare, no apology, no preamble. This isn't sabotage, this is balance. Send. Above my screen, a yellow post-it note fluttered slightly in the leftover breeze from the window draft. I'd written it months ago, back when things were just starting to fray. No one who benefits from me gets to erase me. And I meant it now more than ever. I had spent years building facades for people who couldn't stand their own reflections, held up mirrors so they could pose in front of them, while I disappeared behind the frame. Not anymore. The files were loaded. The paper trail was clean. The freeze was legal. The leverage was real. And I was done being the architect of someone else's empire of smoke and mirrors. Let them call lawyers. Let them scream. Let them bluff. Let them make their next move. By the time the kettle clicked off and the tea had cooled beside me, Rowena's reply lit up my inbox like a fuse. The subject line read, Clarice V. Metadata match confirmed. There were no long explanations in the email body, just the facts. LinkedIn burner profile, =. Clarissa's home IP plus device ID, MacBook Pro serial ending in 29GF. Timestamp matches your vendor cancellation day. Attached were screenshots of a LinkedIn profile called Wedding Watch TN, a bland-looking account with no real photo, one post, and a whole thread of replies. Every comment under trending vendor ads made jabs like, "Word of advice, don't trust unstable clients who fake generosity." Emotional leverage is not partnership, it's manipulation. Beware of consultants who pretend to support you until they blow it all up. None of them used my name, but they didn't need to. Clarissa's style always had that surgical cruelty, like slicing with a scalpel instead of a machete. Clean, silent, precise. I opened the profile, read through the trail again, and caught the common thread. They were trying to label me dangerous, to finances, to feelings, to reputations. And for the first time since this all began, I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. I copied the metadata Rowena had attached, pasted it into a new document labeled Digital Defamation Clarice 5. Then I opened Instagram. The post hit me before I even tapped on it. Luna, standing under fairy lights in what I recognized as the final wedding fitting photo. The caption? "Some people in your family can't stand when it's not about them. That's not love. That's control." She tagged Travis, Clarice, Sandra, Glenn. Not me, of course. I wasn't worth tagging, just worth pointing at. The comments poured in like open applause. "Proud of you for setting boundaries. Let go of the toxic ones, girl. Blood isn't thicker than peace." I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't even screenshot. I already knew how to save what mattered. I opened a private folder, uploaded the LinkedIn screenshots, Clarissa's registration documents, the PayPal receipt, and now this public post. I typed out the timeline. Burner created May 11th. Payment freeze initiated May 13th. Luna post May 14th. They were moving fast, so I had to move with more precision. I scrolled through the post again, then closed the app. I wasn't going to reply in the comments. That would give them what they wanted, proof that I'd cracked. Instead, I opened my notebook and wrote a single line. They weaponize silence and perception, so I'll respond with proof. I sat with that thought for a moment. Then I opened my encrypted drive. Inside, every document Rowena had validated, the lawyer-reviewed contracts, screenshots of all unacknowledged expenses, the burner account metadata, the online post slander. I created a zip file, password protected it, and uploaded it to a secure cloud link. Then I sent 3 emails. To my attorney, subject, pattern of targeted defamation body. All files attached. Will need pre-litigation letters if it escalates. To a local reporter who covered family-run tech startups, subject, Nimbus Edge behind the facade body. Curious if you're still doing stories on founders who build on borrowed ground. To my accountant, Jenna, subject, forensic review request, client, Nimbus Edge crossflow. Body. Please begin tracing expense links, especially where company funds and family favors overlap. Each email included the download link. When I hit send on the last one, my phone buzzed again. Blocked number. I let it ring once, twice. Decline. Seconds later. Hope you're proud of what you've started. Unknown. I smiled and powered the phone off completely. They had built their story on quiet exploitation and assumed I'd never gather the words to contradict it. But now, mine was on paper, backed by files, and in the hands of people with printing presses, subpoenas, and spreadsheets. Let them try to spin the story. I just sent mine to people who can print it. The vineyard was the kind of place people posted about. Every corner was designed for a moment that looked effortless, but took hours of planning and 3 Pinterest boards. Fairy lights zigzagged through an open-air pergola like constellations placed by hand. White tablecloths fluttered softly in the breeze, anchored by centerpieces that screamed, "We don't try too hard," even though everyone knew they absolutely did. It was perfect in the way only money and insecurity could create. It was curated perfection, a living photo op, and it made my skin itch. I parked far enough from the main entrance that no one would see me arrive, just a line of hedges between me and the event. 1 breath, 2. I slid the flash drive into the inside pocket of my coat, next to the folder already prepped with documents. Cold metal, warm fabric. I liked the contrast. It grounded me. I stepped onto the crushed gravel path. The crunch beneath my boots didn't match the carefully chosen background music floating from inside the tent. It didn't belong, and neither did I. A few heads turned, uncertain. The maitre d' had just spotted me, his steps quickening toward my direction, likely to ask if I had a reservation. But I kept walking, straight past him. That was the point. No one expected me. And for once, that worked in my favor. Inside the rehearsal dinner tent, the atmosphere was aggressively elegant. Soft jazz floated from a live quartet. Candlelight flickered on crystal wine glasses. There was a rhythm to the evening, laughter in carefully timed bursts, conversations that only dipped so deep before returning to safety. The entire scene was polished to the point of parody. At the head table stood Luna, dressed in champagne satin, surrounded by Sandra, Clarice, and Travis. They looked like a lifestyle ad. They weren't laughing anymore. Their eyes followed me as I crossed the floor. I didn't nod, didn't smile, didn't give them the out of pretending this was just awkward timing. I walked directly to the center table, reached into my coat, pulled out a small black Bluetooth speaker. I set it down on the linen and pressed play. "Excuse me," I said calmly. "No anger, no theatrics, just volume, sharp and deliberate. This will only take a minute." The room quieted. Clarice's voice came first, clear and dripping with disdain. "He'll pay. Just guilt him. He's stupid when he thinks he's helping." Then Travis, with a sneer that sounded like it barely required effort. "She creeps me out. She's always watching like she's about to write you up." And finally, Luna's voice, low and falsely reassuring. "She won't be at the wedding. Trust me, I'll handle it." A wave of gasps rippled through the tent. Plates stilled mid-bite. Forks froze. Sandra's napkin hung limp in her hand. Glenn looked like he'd been shot and didn't know where the bullet came from. And the string quartet, bless them, stopped playing mid-note, bowstrings caught in the air. I stood still. Let the silence afterward ring out longer than the audio itself. Clarice found her voice first. "That's out of context." I turned to face her. "The context is this. You built a business with my investment, my strategy, and my time. You grew your status off my silence, and then you tried to erase me. From the company, from this wedding, from my own family." She opened her mouth, then shut it again. I pulled the folder from my coat next and walked it over to Zach, Travis's best man. More importantly, the only person in this entire circus who wasn't tied to anyone by blood, marriage, or money. Neutral ground. "This is for you." Inside the folder were receipts totaling $11,438.22 transferred from my accounts to Sandra's and Clarice's, categorized as consulting expenses and marketing reimbursements, wire logs dating back 18 months. A screenshot of Clarice forging my digital signature on a business agreement, and a notarized summary from Rowena's firm, verifying the entire chain of digital evidence, time-stamped, IP traced, metadata locked behind me. A clear voice spoke. Kristen, standing tall, wearing her corporate badge with just enough visibility. She was real authority in this room. Her calmness was louder than any scream. "Files have been authenticated, metadata verified, this wasn't edited." Clarice went pale. Luna's lips parted, then pressed together. Travis stood, but said nothing, just looked trapped in a conversation his charm couldn't talk him out of. Zach looked down at the folder, then back up. "I'm calling off the wedding," he said, quiet but clear. Then the room imploded. Luna let out a scream, high-pitched, sharp, and real. Nothing curated about it. Sandra finally dropped the napkin and covered her mouth. Clarice spun and stormed out like the tent had burst into flames. Glenn trailed after her, not saying a word. Travis moved to grab Luna's hand, but she slapped it away, her mascara already running. And I didn't wait for applause. I walked back to the coat rack, slipped my hand into my pocket, and turned around one last time. "You didn't want me here," I said. "You made that clear." They stared at me, hollow and stunned. "But what you didn't count on was that I'd stop trying to stay." I paused, then added, just loud enough to echo under the tent. "You wanted me gone. Now you get to keep what's left." I stepped out into the cool vineyard air. The fairy lights behind me flickered. The night pressed in, clean and quiet. I expected footsteps, voices, some dramatic exit chase. But no one followed. No one dared. Because the thing about being underestimated for years, when you finally speak, when you finally act, it's deafening. And they heard me. Every last one of them. Loud and clear. The air outside the vineyard felt cleaner than it had in days. I didn't look back. By the time the moon sank behind the hills, I was already halfway out of Nashville. A duffel bag in the passenger seat, the rest of my life in the trunk. I didn't leave a note. I didn't turn on music. I didn't text a single soul. I crossed the city limits just as the first light of morning broke. The new cottage sat at the edge of Knoxville, near the Smokies. Stone exterior, modest porch, a small attic I didn't need but liked knowing was mine. The landlord had accepted my 6-month lease and cashier's checks. No questions asked. That was the point. No one knew where I was, and I liked it that way. The first thing I did after unlocking the door was turn off my phone. Not just silent. Off. I placed it in a drawer and shut it. That drawer hasn't opened since. Next, I transferred every cent from my public accounts to a private one, changed my passwords, deleted LinkedIn, scrubbed old photos from Instagram, unfollowed every name that echoed too loudly in my chest. I didn't block them. I didn't need to. Their silence had always come first. I was just matching it now. A few days after settling in, I returned to Nashville once, quietly. I left one envelope with the front desk of the wedding venue. Inside, a copy of the final invoice I'd paid. On top, a post-it note written in my best handwriting. Thanks for nothing. No signature. When I got back to Knoxville, a manila envelope sat in my new mailbox. No return address. It was my wedding invitation to Luna's ceremony. Unopened, returned, not refused, not undeliverable, just rejected, like I had been, again and again. I didn't cry. I placed it under the sink with the rest of the paper I planned to burn come winter. A week later, Rowena forwarded me a headline. Tech startup Nimbus Edge under financial audit after anonymous tip. Below it, a subheader. Founder Clarice V. declines to comment. I didn't forward it. I didn't save it. I just read it once and closed the tab. Sandra called again, then Glenn emailed. Subject: we should talk. Please. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to explain. I spent my days differently now. Most mornings, I volunteered at a historical archive on the edge of town, cataloging letters, cleaning dust from postcards written in the 1800s. Stories nobody remembered, but someone had once cared enough to keep. Some afternoons, I made tea and sat on the porch, listened to birds I didn't know the names of, watched the sun trace slow, deliberate lines across my little patch of sky. They didn't know where I lived. They didn't know if I was okay. And for the first time, I was. I didn't need closure from them. I needed peace. And this quiet, unfamiliar life I built alone? It wasn't loud, but it was mine. No one had power over it. No one could touch it. And every silence that used to cut me? Now it felt like a boundary, like breath, like home. This box does not accept apologies. And the silence I hear every day now, it finally sounds like mine. Before I go, let me leave you with this. Sometimes the loudest act of love is choosing yourself. For too long, I mistook loyalty for silence. I believed being the helper made me valuable. But love that requires you to disappear is not love. It's control dressed in tradition. And family that only embraces your sacrifices, but never your boundaries, isn't family. It's an audience. I didn't burn bridges. I built a door. And if you've ever felt like the too much in someone else's story, maybe it's time to write your own. So let me ask you, have you ever had to walk away from the people you love just to protect the peace inside you? Or maybe you're still standing at that line, wondering if it's okay to leave. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? What part of this story hit home? Or just drop a 1 if this made you feel seen. If you didn't like the video, I still want to hear why. Let's keep the conversation real. And if you want more stories like this, raw, honest, and full of heart, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next, because your voice matters. And sometimes, hearing someone else's story helps you tell your own.